We are talking about Shiite extremism, which believes in the coming of the Messiah, the Mahdi. The Mahdi is supposed to come in the face of fire and destruction and blood and a lot of suffering. And there are 180 signs that are aligned with this kind of vision of the coming of the Messiah.
I want to go through for our listeners some of the Iranian demands that have come back by way of the latest negotiation gambit on the part of that regime. Number one, they want the withdrawal of all American forces from the region. They also want reparations to be paid for the damage done by the strike against the regime. They want the removal of all sanctions. They want the release of all Iranian assets and frozen funds, some of which you were referring to just a moment ago, and they want the blockade ended. That does not seem to me to be consonant with the regime on the very verge of being toppled. They seem to be, in my opinion, they seem to be almost daring President Trump to go back at them again. What do you think is informing this intransigence on behalf of the Iranians? Because we know, contrary to what many have said in the media, that the military strikes against Iranian targets have been extremely effective, extremely substantial, have done a great deal to reduce, for example, the ballistic missile capabilities, not to eliminate it, but to reduce it. So, Ruth, again, what do you think accounts for this stubbornness, this intractability of the Iranians? What's giving them such great confidence if they are, as you say, right on the verge of being toppled? And as I say, they've taken massive, massive damage.
I first of all agree with you that they've taken massive damage. I think we are talking about a group of very radical Shiite clerics, and not only clerics, but ideologues. And one needs to understand the mindset. We are talking about Shiite extremism, which believes in the coming of the Messiah, the Mahdi. The Mahdi is supposed to come in the face of fire and destruction and blood and a lot of suffering. And there are 180 signs that are aligned with this kind of vision of the coming of the Messiah. Just to explain to the audience that is not perhaps familiar of how far-fetched these signs really are and how much suffering we are talking about, one of those signs is the destruction of the Kaaba. For those who don't remember, the Kaaba is the most sacred element, physical element in Saudi Arabia of Islam, the vast majority of Sunni Islam in the world. One of the 180 signs in the Shiite extremist ideology of the coming of their Messiah, the Mahdi, is the destruction of that Kaaba, of that black box that is the, let's say, the essence, the nucleus, the epitome, the beginning of all Islam. And hence we need to try, it's very difficult, but to try and comprehend the vastness of the extremism of this echelon or strata of leadership that is being left there. Rationale is not the Western rationale that we can sort of lean on, understand, and so on. So saying that the vast majority, they've been hard hit, or the vast majority of their assets have been hit, is a Western concept. 1 + 1 = 2. Therefore, they need to relinquish power, negotiate, and so on to survive. But this is a different mindset. It's a different religious understanding, conception. I try to illustrate how far extreme this concept is. This is one. Two, we are talking about, as we had said, a wounded animal with its back against the wall. If they are to give up, their people will either murder them from within or they will lose power anyway. This is the way that they frame their vision. So they are in a spot as a wounded animal with its back against the wall, that it's all or nothing. So the way that we try and understand that mindset of extremist Islamist perception, in this case Shiite, needs to be inherently different than the way we analyze Western conception and thought. And that's why I understand that their way of dealing with it is also understanding that the more time they take, the more the democratic engines will work against the Trump administration, both in terms of timelines and in terms of the public opinion, which is against this. They've been working very hard to put their own people in very central places in institutions and in the media and in think tanks and in political and policy institutions to shape that mindset. And we can see that at play. And they know that this is working. They just need time. So they are playing that investment out to the fullest while taking maximum risk because of the aforementioned mentality and extremist culture.